The moment your paycheck lands in your account, your brain has about 10 seconds before it starts making bad decisions with money you haven't even touched yet. 10 seconds, and suddenly that new pair of shoes, that weekend trip, that thing sitting in your cart since last week all feel completely necessary. But here's the thing, if you can control those 10 seconds, if you follow one simple routine every single time you get paid, you can end up ahead of almost everyone else financially, and it has nothing to do with how much you earn. Today, I'm walking you through that exact routine, step by step, so stick around because each step builds on the one before it. Let's start with an uncomfortable truth. Most people run their finances completely backwards. They pay their bills, spend on whatever they want, and then try to save whatever happens to be left over. The problem is, there's never anything left over. It's like pouring water into a bucket with a hole in the bottom and wondering why it never fills up. The people who actually build wealth flip that order around entirely. They pay themselves first, they give every dollar a job, and they let their money work for them instead of the other way around. And here's something important to understand. Financial success isn't really about how much you make. It's about how well you manage what you already have. Picture two people. One earns $50,000 a year and consistently saves and invests 10% of it. The other earns $100,000 a year but spends every cent. The first person retires comfortably. The second one is still working at 80 because they never built the system. Income matters, but the system matters more. So let's build that system. 5 steps. Something you repeat every time you get paid. The first thing you need to figure out is exactly what percentage of your income goes toward true necessities. Not vague guesses, an exact number. We're talking about housing, food that keeps you fed, basic transportation, utilities, and healthcare. Notice what's missing from that list. Your streaming subscriptions, your unused gym membership, your daily coffee run. Those might feel essential in the moment, but they are not required for survival. This is where most people trip up. They convince themselves that everything is a necessity. The car payment on a vehicle way above their budget becomes essential transportation. Daily takeout becomes a necessary part of life. And here's a reality check nobody likes to hear. If more than 60% of your take-home pay is going toward true necessities, one of two things is happening. Either you're living somewhere too expensive for your income, or you're calling luxuries necessities so you feel better about your spending. Let's put a real number on this. Say someone brings home $4,500 a month after taxes. Rent is $1,500, a car payment is $350, groceries run $450. That's $2,300, or about 51% of take-home pay. That's a healthy range. But that same person might feel broke every month once you add in the subscriptions, the daily coffee, the constant small purchases that never feel like much. Individually, but quietly add up to hundreds of dollars. Being honest about needs versus wants is the whole game here. Once you know your real necessity percentage, you know exactly how much is actually available for everything else. And everything else is where wealth gets built. Step 2 happens before you spend a cent on anything fun. Make sure every debt payment you owe is current. This isn't about wiping out all your debt overnight. It's about protecting your credit score and avoiding late fees that quietly sabotage your progress. Your credit score is basically your financial reputation, and it touches almost everything. Your mortgage rate, your car loan terms, sometimes even whether you can rent an apartment. Here's something that surprises people. 99% on time payments is considered excellent. Drop to 97% and your score can take a real hit. In school, 97% gets you an A. In credit scoring, it can get you labeled high risk. This step isn't exciting, but it's the foundation everything else sits on. Step 3 is the one everyone puts off until they desperately need it, the emergency fund. This is money set aside for when life throws you a curveball, and life loves throwing curveballs. Your car breaks down, your laptop dies the week of a big deadline. Something unexpected comes up that has nothing to do with your regular budget. The goal is 3 to 6 months of your essential living expenses sitting somewhere you can access immediately, not invested in the stock market, where it could lose value at the worst possible time, and not locked away, where you can't touch it for months. Just a plain, boring, high-yield savings account. Back to our earlier example. If monthly necessities run $2,300, the emergency fund target would be somewhere between about $7,000 and $14,000. That number can feel intimidating, especially if you're living paycheck to paycheck right now. But you're not building this in one shot. You're building it steadily. And here's something people rarely mention about emergency funds. They're not just about the money, they're about peace of mind. When you have that cushioned, you sleep better, you handle setbacks at work without panic, because you know a rough month won't wreck your life. The mistake people make here is trying to make this money earn great returns. So they invest it somewhere risky or lock it up. Then, when the actual emergency hits, the money is either worth less or they can't get to it fast enough. This fund isn't meant to grow. It's meant to be there. Once your emergency fund is in place, you've moved from survival mode into wealth building mode, and this is where things get genuinely exciting. Step 4 is investing in your future. If your employer offers any kind of retirement match, that becomes your absolute first priority. Think about it like this. If your employer said, put some money into this account and I'll match it, you'd assume there's a catch. There isn't. That's literally what an employer match is. Free money that a huge number of people leave completely untouched. Say your company matches 3% and you make $60,000 a year. Contribute $1,800 annually and your employer adds another $1,800. You just doubled your money instantly. There's no other investment on earth that guarantees a same-day 100% return. Beyond the match, aim to invest around 10% of your gross income for retirement. That might sound like a lot starting out, but this money compounds over decades, and starting early matters more than almost anything else. Someone who invests $300 a month starting at 25, earning an average 8% return, ends up with roughly $1 million by 65. Wait until 35 to start the same amount, and that number drops to around $400,000. A 10-year delay costs about $600,000. Time is genuinely the biggest lever you have here. People overthink this step constantly. They spend months comparing funds and reading about expense ratios and never actually start. For most people, a simple diversified index fund tracking the overall market is completely sufficient. You don't need to pick winning stocks or time anything. You need consistency. Step 5, once retirement investing is running on autopilot, is tackling any debt beyond your mortgage. There are 2 solid approaches here. The avalanche method targets the highest interest debt first, which saves you the most money mathematically. The snowball method targets the smallest balance first, regardless of interest rate, which isn't the most efficient path on paper, but tends to keep people motivated because they see debts disappearing quickly. Personal finance is honestly more about psychology than math. If knocking out your smallest debt first keeps you going, that's the right choice for you, even if it costs a little extra in interest. Just pick one approach and stick with it until the debt is gone. So here's the whole system laid out together. Figure out your real necessity percentage and be honest about it. Stay current on every debt payment to protect your credit. Build a 3 to 6 month emergency fund in a plain savings account. Grab your employer match, then invest around 10% of your income for retirement. And finally, pay down any remaining debt using whichever method keeps you consistent. None of this is flashy, and none of it will make you rich overnight. But run this same routine every single time you get paid, and you'll end up ahead of the vast majority of people. Not because you earned more, but because you actually had a system for what you earned.